Welcome to Bench Stash Keeping Score. Your boy Leo Cali. Got Derek D over here.
Oh shit, you're taking the reins.
Taking the reins.
Just sit
My
back.
segment. You just sit here and watch and offer some just terrible analysis while I run through these very dry numbers.
That's what I do anyways.
Boom, perfect. If you're new to keeping score, this segment is basically where I run through the weekly results of the players that finish top 12 of their position, RB1s or wide receiver ones, and point out the guys who ADP was a starter at their position. So they were drafted as RB2 or RB1 or wide receiver 1 through 2, top 24 basically, to sort of pinpoint that, first of all, fantasy is a weekly game, so these season-long numbers don't really reflect how much these players helped you. And second of all, this idea of, your first-round pick is a bust, doesn't matter that much if the guy you took in the 5th round, who you did draft as a starter, has been, killing it. If you drafted DeMarco Murray, it doesn't really matter if your first-round pick is a bust. So it's basically, did the guys you take as starters, are they working out at each position, just to sort of keep score of running backs versus wide receivers. This is...
Oh, is that why it's called keeping score?
Yeah.
Oh, I just figured it out.
Boom.
Ooh.
Welcome to the train of thought. Choo-choo. All aboard. So let's get into some running backs. So these are the results from week 5 as we enter week 6. Boom.
Oh, blam.
Running back numbers up on your screen.
Tasty. Look at the end. Look at the end of that list.
Look at
the saucy running backs.
The saucy running backs in the second half of that list. Yeah, this week, 7 running backs that were drafted as starters finished as RB1s. 6 of which were drafted as RB1s. This is a very successful week for the early round running backs. To quickly run through the list, David Johnson finished first. He was taken as the RB2 in the first round, followed by Ezekiel Elliott, number 2, who was taken as the RB4 also in the first round. So, those two have kind of been all over this list all year. They've been the 2 best guys to have taken in the first round, apparently. And then you get a bunch of late round guys in a row. Tevin Coleman, 13th round. Jordan Howard, 21st round. Cameron Artis-Payne, 20th round. Theo Riddick, 11th round. So none of these guys you took as starters. You probably were using them this week, but, you didn't draft them that way. Then we get Devonta Freeman popping in at number 7, taken as the RB7 in the second round. I thought Devonta Freeman was going to be a bust this year, so it's been a pleasant surprise to see him putting up RB1 numbers most weeks.
He is. He's an RB1 right now.
He is an RB1.
Through 5 weeks of the season, yeah.
Yeah. So moving on next, we have Carlos Hyde at number 8. The RB14 is where he was drafted in the 3rd round. So not as an RB1, but still as a starter. And then Matt Asiata, undrafted free agent. You probably weren't starting him after what happened the week before, so he was just there to tilt McKinnon owners. And then we get the 3 in a row. LaShawn McCoy taken as the RB12 in the 3rd round. Le'Veon Bell at 11, taken as the RB6 in the 2nd round. And then Todd Gurley squeaking in as an RB1 for now 2 out of 5 weeks. But taken as the RB1. So not quite what you hope for Todd Gurley, but he's helped you a couple weeks now at least. It hasn't been a total disaster. He didn't get hurt.
This is the week. This is a week for Todd Gurley, though.
You hope
he's
so,
gonna
man.
explode like a diaper.
If he doesn't, then just drop him, is basically what we're saying.
Oh, you don't even trade him for his name. Just drop him.
No, because his name will be trashed by then. So, yeah, 7 of the 12 running backs. That is, just over 50%. And the running back pool is a little bit smaller than 24 due to, injuries and bye weeks. So, really, it's closer to 60%, So I think it's about 2/3 of the running backs that were drafted as starters finished in the top 12.
Yeah,
so
it's fantastic.
That's a good week for running backs. It's nice to see. Then we move on to wide receiver. Results are not quite as promising. I messed up on the colors for this. This is very embarrassing. I accidentally highlighted Sammy Coates, who's not taken as a wide receiver 1. I meant to highlight Mike Evans. So it's still 4 wide receivers were taken as starters that finished as wide receiver 1s, but ignore that Sammy Coates is highlighted. Oh my goodness. So number 1 was Sammy Coates, drafted as a wide receiver 71 in the 18th round. Not a starter. Not ever going to happen again. And then number 2, T.Y. Hilton, taken as a wide receiver 16 in the 3rd round, starter. Amari Cooper was the wide receiver 3, taken just outside of the wide receiver 1 range as the wide receiver 13 in the 3rd round. So, those 2 and 3 are pretty good. And then we kind of get the run here that isn't so good for around wide receivers. We get Larry Fitzgerald taken as a wide receiver 28 in the end of the 5th. That's kind of borderline, but still not a starter.
Yeah.
Brandon LaFell was wide receiver 5, take his wide receiver 82. You weren't starting Brandon LaFell, just be honest. Then a bunch of guys, Adam Thielen, undrafted free agent. Tyrell Williams, you might have been starting just because of, what his position is, but undrafted. Cameron Meredith, undrafted. And then Brandon Marshall at the wide receiver 9 comes in. He was drafted as a wide receiver 9, so that's kind of cool.
Dead on. Yeah.
Dead on. He's giving you exact value of what you drafted him as. The number 10, Jeremy Curley, undrafted. 11, we get Mike Evans, drafted as the wide receiver.
Bam.
11. That's crazy.
Woo.
So Evans
It
and
happened
Marshall
again.
just right on their value. So that's, and then Devonta Adams, number 12, not taking the 19th round. He doesn't mean anything. So that's only 4 wide receivers of the 12 were guys drafted as starters. That's approximately a third. The pool is a little bit smaller than the 24, so it ends up being closer to 40%. But still, this is the percentage of wide receivers that were drafted as starters that finished as wide receiver 1s is smaller than the same for running backs. And it's been this trend for a few weeks now. This is 3 weeks in a row of this happening. It was kind of an even split the first couple weeks, and it's just kind of slowly been the running backs distancing themselves.
What's the score up to this point?
So the score up to this point, as we add it together week by week, is 30 for the running back, 22 for the wide receiver.
Dominant performance.
Yeah, that's 8 more, or an average of 1 point something a week, close to 2 a week.
Although it's still a 1-possession game with an 8-point separation,
It is,
the wide receivers can punch it in, go for the 2-point conversion, and tie up this bad boy.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen.
That's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, if we look at the top 12 through 5 weeks, just to kind of see how things have fallen season long as well.
Yeah.
We have for the wide receivers, Antonio Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he fits that mold. Marvin Jones is the wide receiver 2. He would be outside of that range. Julio Jones, okay. Mike Evans, yep.
Yep.
T.Y. Hilton, yep. Michael Crabtree is a 6th, wide receiver 6. Ooh. He was not drafted to be a starter.
Yep.
Larry Fitzgerald is a wide receiver 7. He was not drafted to be a starter. A.J. Green, okay, he was drafted to be a starter. Demaryius Thomas, I think he fits into the starter mold. Mm-hmm. I wonder what his ADP finished as, though, because he was kind of fluctuating all over the place.
I mean, I can look that up really quick here. ADP. He's probably as a starter. Let's see.
Yeah, I think he was drafted as a starter, but I know he slipped to like the 4th.
Yeah, he was wide receiver 17. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was sliding.
He's definitely drafted to be a starter. Then Amari Cooper, drafted to be a starter. Then the last 2, Emmanuel Sanders and Kelvin Benjamin.
Sanders was not. Kelvin was.
Not.
Yeah.
Kelvin was. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like 8 wide receivers that were drafted to be starters through 5 weeks have finished as wide receiver 1s. Mm-hmm. That's Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton, A.J. Green, Demaryius Thomas, Amari Cooper, and Kelvin Benjamin. If we go to the running backs, the top 12 running backs through 5 weeks, we have David Johnson, number 1, who's obviously drafted to be a starter. DeMarco Murray, number 2, was drafted to be a starter. Ezekiel Elliott, he was drafted in the top 5, so yeah, he was drafted to be a starter. Carlos Hyde was drafted to be a starter. Mm-hmm. I think Melvin Gordon just slipped into that range. He's number 5.
Yeah.
Was drafted to be a starter. LaShawn McCoy was definitely drafted to be a starter, so 6 for 6 so far. Mm-hmm. Tevin Coleman, here we go. Here's one that was not drafted to be a starter. He snuck in there. Devonta Freeman was drafted to be a starter. He comes in at number 8. Then we get LeGarrette Blount at number 9, was not drafted to be a starter. Isaiah Crowell at number 10 was not drafted to be a starter. C.J. Anderson,
boom, he was
11, was drafted to be a starter, and Matt Forte rounds out the top 12, who was also drafted to be a starter. So you have 9 running backs that were drafted to be a starters, finishing through 5 weeks in the top 12. So relatively close through 5 weeks, but if you're breaking it down week by week, then the running backs are ahead. They're even ahead through 5 weeks and just looking at the top 12, basically.
That's why
even though it's 1.
Using season-long numbers for this is deceptive because it looks like, oh, it's basically even, but on a weekly basis, it hasn't been actually. There's the running backs just edge them out a little bit each week, and that adds up over the course of a season.
But I mean, if you just look at the names at the top of the running back list, I
Yeah.
think I mean, it's been 5 weeks, so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it just goes to show that the RB apocalypse of last season was kind of was an anomaly because really, I mean, the top 6, David Johnson, DeMarco Murray, Ezekiel Elliott, Carlos Hyde, Melvin Gordon, LaShawn McCoy, those guys were all drafted to be starters.
Yeah.
They were drafted high. It's supposed to be, a position that suffers a lot of injuries, the fragility of the running back. And so far, it hasn't really worked out that way. Running back has been really solid through 5 weeks this season.
It's been a good season so far for running backs. At least, this is standard scoring in PPR. I'm sure it would look pretty different. But, that was kind of one of the narratives for zero RB was that, oh, but it works in standard too. And we're kind of seeing it doesn't give you any advantage. In fact, it's giving you a little bit of a disadvantage. The probability of you hitting on one of these, hitting on one of these running backs is smaller if you went zero RB. And that early wide receiver pool isn't helping you as much. The kind of buzz about the early wide receivers that are busting is just so quiet, like Odell Beckham gets some attention, but he's not getting treated like, Todd Gurley, who's getting treated like a pariah, for what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't seen anything really on Odell other than like, he'll turn it around, but there's no faith in Todd Gurley turning it around. It's a completely different narrative. And you could say the same thing about New York's offense. Their offense has looked anemic. Eli Manning has not looked good. So, I mean, you have to be a little bit concerned as an Odell Beckham owner, just like you have to be concerned if you're a Todd Gurley owner because of the situation they're in right now. But, I mean, if you went David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott in the first round, you're happy.
Yeah.
Le'Veon Bell's only played 2 games, but he's been an RB1 in both of the games that he's played.
And that's without any touchdowns either.
That's without any touchdowns. He is just... I mean, he's looked like the Lev Bell of old. So it's only a matter of time before he ends up in the top 12 list. I mean, let's see where he's at right now. He is the RB 30 right now. But if you go by average, he is averaging, let's see here, 16 points a game. He is number 4. If you're going by fantasy points per game, then this whole list looks a little bit different. You have Le'Veon Bell right up next to Ezekiel Elliott and DeMarco Murray and David Johnson. He's right in that conversation, and I think he will continue to be in that conversation for the rest of the year. Who knows with Jamal Charles? He's another name that has yet to make an impact because he's been out.
Yeah.
But this week we're going to see maybe the return of JC.
The matchup is there, and historically he's kind of
JC.
Yeah, historically he's shredded the Raiders too, so this could be, this breakout week for him. Who knows?
Yeah, but then we're getting this coach speak stuff again, which is so hard to really read into, where they're like, "Oh, we'll sprinkle them in every once in a while,"
I think it means nothing because the Chiefs have no advantage in saying this is how we're going to use Jamal Charles this week. Like it helps them to be cryptic. Because then the Raiders just have to plan for it as if, all right, I guess we're going to see, who knows how much of Jamal we're going to see. So they have to plan for him and Spencer Ware instead of being like, nope, it's going to be Jamal. And then they can be like, all right, we don't have to worry about figuring out how to stop Spencer Ware then. So it's just for a competitive edge.
Well, I mean, teams should basically give up on that anyways because there's no way to stop Spencer Ware. You can game plan for it, but it's just not going to happen. Well, they have to focus on the running back they can stop, and that's Jamal Charles.
The way you stop Spencer Ware is you just go ahead and let him carry the ball and he'll fumble because that's what his play is.
Oh, yes, he has had a fumble in 3 straight games.
Yeah, it's not.
Although that one stupid pylon fumble, I'm still tilted over that one.
Still tilting about that from like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I can't believe this.
It would have completely changed the outlook. I mean, he's still averaging 5.3 yards a carry, Spencer Ware, and he's averaging 120 yards a game from scrimmage. So he's putting up elite numbers still, even with all these fumbles.
We'll see. We'll see as soon as this week what happens. We'll watch.
When he outscores Jamal Charles?
I mean, this is possible. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. All I'm looking for this week is Jamal looks like himself. If I see that, I don't even care if he doesn't like produce because he's like is on limited touches or whatever. If he looks like Jamal, then like that's all you got to see to be happy.
Yeah, well, the final stat line is going to read something like this: Jamal Charles will finish with 1 fantasy point,
Oh.
and Spencer Ware will finish with 1.1 fantasy points. So technically,
Good
Spencer
Lord.
Ware will outscore Jamal Charles, but I mean, the Raiders are just going to stuff them both because with their elite run defense,
Elite,
I mean,
sure.
Kansas City in trouble.
Hey,
I
in
mean,
trouble.
have you seen their defense? They're 4-1. That means their defense is doing something right.
Is it that's what that means?
That's exactly what that means. I mean, they have a better record than Denver, who supposedly has an elite defense. So, I mean, using that logic, then
They
their
do for
record's better, so their
the next
defense is
3
better than
days.
Denver.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. All right, this has devolved into talking about the Raiders Chiefs game for some reason. So we'll go ahead and
I have no idea how that happened. I have nothing to do with that.
you have nothing to do with that. All right, so
No,
we'll
not at
wrap
all.
this up. Yeah, this has been keeping score. I will continue to do this every week, and if you like it, let me know so I don't feel like I'm throwing this out into the void for only my and Derek's interest.
Oh, it is interesting stuff, though.
Yeah,
I'll
it
definitely
is.
blast it out.
Learning is good, guys. Learning is good. Okay, we'll wrap this up. Thank you.
I just okay.
Yeah. Thank you for watching and listening, and like, subscribe, comment, share, tweet at us, comment at us, etc. Put us on all the library computers.
Etc.
Yeah, and we will catch you next week with more hot bench stash content.
Hot, hot, hot.
Hot, hot, hot. All right.
All right.
That'll do
Cut it.